true, and I feel this as well. There's lots of like information overload. I feel like I can't see the wood from the trees anymore. Like I don't like. There's too much information out there. That's why I say, look, I haven't looked into Syria. There's so much other shit going on. Like I can't be over everything. So I'm hoping you guys have done your homework and you could educate me and summarize what the hell is going on and what does it actually mean.
There, you dismantle the Hamas, Hezbollah, but what is the plan for IS? How you will dismantle these 50,000 terrorists?
I think it would be good to get Coping's view on all this. Coping, my man. You said you're going to educate me and us. Go on then. So if you could explain your stance and also what if you can also respond to what Khan said. Thanks.
Sure, thank you. It's a very messy conflict, so I understand why that is. I mean, and to be full disclaimer, I'm no expert or anything like that. I just happen to be interested in these things. But what Khan was saying regarding the Kurds and oil and all those kind of things, it's both accurate and it's slightly a little bit even more so because if you look at the map, you'll find in between the Kurdish-controlled areas and all the way down to where Israel has now moved in, and I'll get to that really shortly. You have also the U.S. bases there, and they are situated right near oil fields, which were seemingly, in the last reports I've come across, taken over by ISIS. But taking over is kind of it's not as black and white. There's this large swathes of territory and installations. So now, let's see. I want to see if we can get this to be angled towards the UK. So let me first start with, I stated before, Muslims killing Muslims, that doesn't reach the news. It's only newsworthy if you have a non-Muslim element to it. I have an entire spiel on that somewhere else. I'll let you guys be informed about it later. So the things that we are hearing here, where are the non-Muslim elements? Well, the HTS is ostensibly the ones controlled by the West. Well, not controlled, but they're kind of armed to some extent. Some advisors have been given, some and so forth. And they are the ones who took Aleppo, Hama, Homs, and Damascus. They are the ones who eventually toppled Assad completely. And they have also been moving towards the coast and towards the Russian air base as well as their naval base, which is very surprising for many people because while there were drastic advances that they had in the beginning, it was anticipated that the Assad forces alongside with the Russian airstrike would be able to regroup and at the very least hold Homs, because without Homs, the logistics of Damascus vis-a-vis the Russians would be critically compromised. But then just a few days pass, Damascus falls, the Russians are now pressed against the HTS, and the HTS of the Hezbollah were trying to send in a few thousand troops to be assisting, and then they promptly withdrew everything. Interestingly enough, as they did so, the Israelis, when the Lebanese armed forces, not Hezbollah, but the Lebanese armed forces moved into the Lebanese border to stop any incursions from the HTS, when the HTS tried, the Israelis came to assist them. So peculiarly enough, they did not attack the Hezbollah when they were moving back into Lebanon, which may suggest maybe a part of the ceasefire, but there is a contradiction to that. And that is that basically the Hezbollah had came with a precondition. No negotiation of a ceasefire with Israel before. There was a separate ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. Well, a few months later, the entire political and military leadership of Hezbollah is taken out. You have Fuad Shukr and so forth, senior staff taken out. Hassan Nasrallah taken out. 4 days later, his newly appointed successor taken out. I think there was another one. And what's interesting with that is, and still they are celebrating an unconditional ceasefire on the streets. So they're celebrating a loss, basically. But what's interesting with that one is that it was Hassan Nasrallah, right up until the point he was assassinated, made it clear there would still be no deviation from the stance. There will be no negotiation of a ceasefire with Israel before a separate ceasefire with Hamas has been achieved. He's taken out. His second in command was the appointed, of course. He probably held a very similar stance, taken out. So once the political leadership was liquidated, we saw the submission of Hezbollah. And with the fall of Syria, Hezbollah is likely to become extinct in sooner rather than later. Now, one may wonder then, why did the Israelis move into Damascus? Well, not Damascus, but into Syria. Actually, one question one really should ask oneself is, why didn't the Israelis do so earlier? Because keep in mind, Syria and Israel are officially at war. They never signed a peace treaty. They never signed a ceasefire. They had an armistice, which they agreed to. And when Assad's forces left the demarcation zone, the part which was supposed to be demilitarized, the Israelis had really no other choice but to take it over, because if they didn't, then the jihadis would. And of course, since they're talking about an enemy, why should you return it? So an interesting thing that should be noted, Netanyahu made a speech, 2 different video speeches, one in English and one in Hebrew. The one that was in English mentioned the word Israel moved in temporarily, which called my bullshit detectors to be sounding an alarm immediately, because it just didn't make any logical sense. Who are you going to return it to? The one you made the agreement with is not going to resume power. The ones who are assuming power have openly stated that they're hostile towards you. From the beginning of the civil war, they made it clear that if they manage to take down Assad, there will be no recognition of Israel. And now recently you see more and more videos of many of the subgroups making it clear, no, they're going to go to Jerusalem, they're going to go to Mecca, they're also going to go to the Vatican. So these are pretty much, they're not ISIS, but they're pretty much the same. They still want a supranational entity, a caliphate. And they are openly sided with the Hamas, basically. So now I can go on forever, but let's put it like this. The Kurds and the Israelis are perhaps the closest as allies, but I'm not really sure if you can really call it that. It's more a matter of mutual convenience. The Turks are definitely the one who are having the most influence on all of this. And the reason that the rebels took the opportunity was because, notice, they attacked as soon as the ceasefire was signed. Okay, this strongly suggests that either they planned to do so as soon as an anticipated ceasefire came, they were going to do so, or when Hezbollah was sufficiently weakened anyways that they could go about it. Because keep in mind, Hezbollah was fighting these people, after all, for 10 years in one of the most brutal wars of the 21st century. When Hassan Nasrallah was taken out by the Israelis, there were plenty of Syrians who were celebrating because they've had family members taken out in the most brutal ways by Hezbollah. And so they attacked, this happened. We have Syrians in Norway, for example, celebrating the downfall of Assad, which of course immediately begs the question, because now I'm coming back to the UK and Europe, right? So are these people to be sent back to those who now they're not secular dictatorships, they're actually more prone to become jihadi, like theocracies, right? Is that safe for them to return to? Well, if it isn't, it is because they're no longer Muslim, right? That should be easily recognized. Also, I am curious to see if we're going to see more tensions, clashes between Syrians, where you have now more Syrian refugees coming over, but these refugees are more of the pro-Assad element. Will we see a problem with those tensions here on the streets back home? I think there's a lot to. I've talked a lot right now, so I just want to stop myself and if there's anything, yeah, thank you.
No, thanks for that. And can I ask, Ibs, Jake, do any of you guys want to respond to what Coping has said? If not, I will go and to Anand. No? No? Okay, if I go to Anand then. Hi, welcome back, Anand.
Oh, good evening. Good afternoon for you guys.
Yes. Your thoughts on what Coping has said?
I have a little different take, right? It is impossible for this to have happened suddenly without the Americans, the Russians, and the Israelis coming to an agreement. So this is there's nothing to do with Assad falling naturally. This was the perfect time of multiple different factors coming together, right? If you think about it, the Russians are the weakest in terms of their holdings in the Middle East because they're so busy with their war. At the same time, Israel has basically almost finished off Hezbollah in Lebanon, and in terms of their strong power. Iran's dealing with, again, multiple challenges on its eastern flank with Afghanistan. It's facing issues with Iraq as well. Because again, the Sunnis there, because majority of Iraq is a Shia, but the Sunnis always keep trying to take power. And then if you notice, the Americans, the outgoing administration doesn't want to make it easier for the incoming administration. If you notice everywhere, all over the world, right? They're creating lots of boiling pots for Trump to fix. And to me, what I'm thinking is that if Trump comes back, he's already said very clearly that Syria is not going to be an issue for the Americans. Like, find it out. So it even more makes it the perfect time to overthrow Assad, because then there can be no other American-backed way of getting Assad in power or any of that sort. It ties his hands basically. The final thing I want to think is, I think Coping made a good point. What are we going to do with the people who have run out of Syria because Assad was a warmonger or whatever they were saying? Ideally, they should go back to the regions where these guys have taken over. Correct? All of them should go back because essentially their argument was we require asylum in your country as long as Assad is in power because he's targeting us. Now and many of these people were rich people. They were not it's not just poor people. While they were being attacked by the conflict, they were mostly well-to-do people who traveled across the world. My suggestion would be for them to go back to the locations where the rebels have taken control and set up your life again. Help in rebuilding your country. If you really are a nationalist, you'd want to go back, correct? You'd want to be sitting happy in some other place and letting your country be managed by other people. The last thing, and again, the Assad supporters, assuming that Assad supporters are minuscule minority, oppressive people, I mean, it's they're going to go to places where you assume to be more oppressive. So they would run to Russia, they run to Belarus, places that they get asylum in. They won't come to your country, right? Because there they can be prosecuted by human rights organizations. So I think Coping needs to worry about that group coming to the West, ideally. And one last thing, I think you were talking about mental health, I think. Someone was mentioning mental health.
No, we can't hear you. Okay, I'll move on to Council and Mike. Welcome back. Hi, George. How are you doing?
Good. Hi, Lubna. How are you?
Yes, okay, thank you. So you are, I can't remember. It's Lebanon, isn't it? You're from Lebanon.
So I'm Lebanese, Greek descent, and what is called Palestinian on my mom's side, originally. Yeah.
Yes, I think you said in the comments that you can come and talk about what your thoughts are on Syria.
Yeah, I don't know how much you've already covered. I only was able to join now, so. But you discussed it, I suppose, already to some extent.
We have discussed it. What are your thoughts? Is it a good thing what's happening? Is it a bad thing what's happening? What's going to be the impact, especially for UK? Would be interesting to know. And why is Israel bombing them? Like, what's Israel got to do with it?
Okay, so well, it's the kind of classic situation of lesser of two evils kind of situation. You're not sure which one's the lesser evil. It's Shiite Sunni division, internecine war. For those who don't know, after the death of Muhammad, he did not appoint an heir, much like Alexander the Great, oddly enough, which also split his kingdom. And so there was a debate over who would be the heir. And so the Sunni side, basically, I'm simplifying, but the Sunni side basically says whoever is the most righteous Muslim and the most apt to govern. On the Shiite side, what would become the Shiite side, the argument was more people who are related to Muhammad were saying, well, it has to be somebody who's related to our prophet, and hence the division. And of course, Ali was the cousin and son-in-law of Muhammad. And so the Sahaba, the companions of Muhammad, began to fight one another, vying for supremacy. And that's the origin of the Shiite Sunni divide. The Shiites kind of lost, if you will, and they constitute they're a minority in the Muslim world, right? Well, what has happened was in the 16th century, Safavid Iran came to power. So Shiism became the dominant theological color, if you will, of Iran. And then, so Iran becomes basically mostly Shia, as is Iraq also today, just slightly mostly Shia. And so what happened, they have a different view on things, a different way of interpreting their Quran slightly. So they consider each other infidels back and forth between the Sunnis and the Shiites. There's other sects, but those are the two main ones. And what happened was, so you've got Israel now in the region, and Israel's way to survive, being a small, not even a pond, and an ocean of people who are religiously devoted to their extermination, is to kind of play the Shiite versus Sunni against each other. And it's been a successful strategy. And it's a national interest kind of strategy that a whole bunch of other countries have adopted, including Arab Muslim countries. And so Israel used to train the Iranians in the 1980 to 1989 Iran-Iraq war. So they are on the side of the Islamic revolution in Iran. They figured that we'd get a Shiite power in Iran that would countervail the power of Saddam Hussein, who was a Sunni ruler of Iraq. What happened was that kind of blew up in their face eventually because the Persians, to their credit, are extremely smart. And by the way, when the Islamic Revolution came to power, they were speaking much like Hayat Tahrir al-Sham is talking today. So the rebels, the so-called freedom fighters, are talking today, headed by Ahmad al-Shara', whose nom de guerre is al-Julani, because he comes from the Golan Heights originally. So he's talking about, we're gonna respect minorities, and this is a broad coalition of rebels. And the Islamic Revolution leaders were talking exactly the same way. And then once they got into power, they eliminated all those who opposed them, and then established a completely dictatorial rule. Today instance in Khamenei. And so the Iranians' dream was to revive the old Achaemenid Empire, Persian Empire, but under the banner of Islam. And the way to do that is to have an overarching goal, which is kill all the Jews, which finds very rich, fertile soil in Muslim lands. And so they've been seeking to create a Shiite fertile crescent. So connecting Iran to Iraq, which is majoritarily Shiite slightly, to Syria, which is majoritarily Sunni, but headed by the Alawites. So the Assads are Alawites. They are a minority even within Shiites, but they're extreme Shiites. So they basically worship Ali as divine. And then through Hezbollah in Lebanon, creating that Shiite crescent. In so doing, however, they were brutal in suppressing Sunnis. And now that Israel has hollowed out Hezbollah and hollowed out Syria, the ground was open for the rebels to take their revenge for the so-called Arab Spring. What a misnomer. And so they've just come in really quickly, supported by Turkey, and they've taken over. So we can talk about why Israel's doing this. Israel's bombing out the Syrian army because essentially what you have on the ground is Al-Qaeda and the ISIL that Barack Obama helped create or encourage. They're taking over the country, and Israel can't afford, neither can Lebanon, nor can the surrounding countries afford to have a Taliban-like state on their borders. So Israel is hastening to completely destroy the Syrian army. But the ones who are really doing damage, and a lot more, for much more sinister purposes, have been Turkey, because they're also Sunnis. You can't advance from northern Syria to the south that quickly in 11 days and not have your back covered by Turkey. So Erdogan is a master player. He is incredibly sharp. He can juggle knives like nobody's business. There's a Turkish expression that says he's got 49 foxtails in his head and none of them touch each other. So Turkey believes in irredentism, kind of like Russia. They believe this is the old Ottoman Empire. It belongs to us, so we want to recover it. So they're backing that kind of drive. And what's happening now, what I'm concerned with, is I'm concerned for the minorities. I know Ahmad al-Shara' held an interview with a CNN reporter, and he said, we're going to respect the minorities and whatnot. But I'll tell you this, here's how you can know whether those guys are going to be friendly to minorities and going to rule as a democracy as they're claiming to be, is that he refused to grant audience to the CNN journalists unless you wore a hijab, a cover. And so what I submit to you is, if he would not even address a foreign woman from CNN unless you wore a hijab, imagine what he would expect of women living under Syria from now on. And if you want to know what it's going to be like for Syria, all you need to do is look at Idlib, where the rebel forces launched out from. There's different factions. You've got the Kurds also in the east, but they're overcome. Nobody wants to give them a state. You never hear about the genocide against the Kurds, by the way, who are also Muslims and Sunni, but nobody talks about them because no Jews, no news, right? So look at how they ran Idlib, and that's how they ran it. I understand the Sunni resentment. The Christians do have a lot of resentment against Hezbollah, the tortures that were committed in the prisons, the absolute brutal repression of everybody. The Sunnis have their hearts full of rage, and they want their vengeance, and I understand that. I think sadly what's going on is one dictator out, one dictator in.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah.
Can I go to the kid? Yeah, go on, the kid.
Yeah, I just wanted to agree and add to what George said. So I was just watching right now the Israeli news, and we have an Israeli reporter inside Syria right now, 30 kilometers away from Damascus. So this is unprecedented. This is like, we need to understand, history is in the making. We are right now in a historical event, okay? The biggest reason why Israel is right now inside of Syria, which is something that we haven't planned at all, like even in the war we had right now with with Hezbollah and Gaza and everything, we didn't even imagine we would need to go into Syria. The reason we have that is because with Assad, we had a buffer zone of 30 kilometers between Israel and between Syria. That buffer zone was made because we didn't want to have airstrikes from Syria coming into Israel or fighters coming into Israel, because we had a lot of those kind of problems in the...
Can I just ask you? I don't know much about the war and all that kind of stuff, but when you say Israel didn't know what's going to happen in Syria and this was unexpected, I'm just going to speculate. But they came out. They quickly came out of Lebanon, right? All of a sudden, and they listened to America, and America told them to get out. So it's almost as if someone had inside information about what's going to happen in Syria. The rebels are going to do their business, and they came out of Lebanon before, in anticipation of using the inside information that something's going to happen in Syria, so we're going to need the resource there. I don't know. I'm speculating. That's what it feels like.
It is a possibility. It is a possibility. I am not sure, because look, my dad is in the army. Specifically right now, he's a reservist, and he's a very high-ranking officer. He's not telling me everything, and also he doesn't know everything. Sure, because there's levels of security briefing, so he doesn't know everything, and we have discussed it a bit. But from my understanding, it wasn't planned. Like, even if somebody did know about this, we didn't think that the rebels would be so successful, because look, it ended in less than 2 weeks, right? It was so quick. So, but I do think that what you're talking about, I think we can look at what Erdogan from Turkey did from the beginning of the Israeli war with Gaza. The moment the Israeli war with Gaza started, he was very strong against Israel. Very, very strong against. Now, it's not something very special, because he's very vocal against Israel, even though Israel helped Turkey on so many occasions, so many times. So I don't know what the fuck is this problem. Sorry. But I think that he knew that he's going to plan an invasion into Syria, and he wanted all the attention away from him. So he just flamed the flames on Israel and made us look as bad. And look what he's doing right now. He's still saying that Israel is doing that and that in Syria, and Israel should stop. His guys, like George said, his guys in Syria are doing so much more damage. They are like a terrorist group. They're not really, I wouldn't say they're, like, there's a military to Turkey, but I don't think that the military is in Turkey. I think in Syria. I think the groups, Turkish groups in Syria right now, they are more of a terrorist sect of Turkey. I think, George, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that they are more rogue. And I think they do what they want. We can see what they're doing to the Kurds and what they're doing to the Christians right now. And I'm saying that not just the rebels, just like specifically the Turks. And yeah, and you can see. And again, I'm asking, like George said, no Jews, no news. Like, where are all the humanitarian organizations that were talking about what Israel is doing in Gaza? Did we see the same news coming from Syria? Did we see the children coming from prisons? Children, they weren't taken as children. Women were taken when they were pregnant, and they gave birth in prison. That is horrific.
So not just when they were pregnant, they were raped. Those are the children of their rapist.
I'm getting chills in my body just thinking about it. We have seen levels after levels of the darkest prisons in the world right now in Syria. People coming out in ways that they were not just unfed, they were tortured for days, for months. There was one also, they showed a machine that crushes the bodies of people there disperse of any remains, so they won't even have to give the family a proper burial. They just dispose of the bodies just like that. Horrific stuff. And I am very pessimistic. I have some Syrian friends talking with me and saying that we need to celebrate the good news, because it is good news that Assad fled and Assad fell. We need to understand that this regime was 55 years, I think, in the making, from his father till now. It's really unprecedented, because it's not like Saddam Hussein or anything. It's even bigger than that. But I do think that, like George said, it's going to be dark days ahead of us. And I think that what we're going to see is that Syria is going to be split into functions, because right now there is no Syrian border. Like, people can cross the border from Israel to Syria. Israel, just like I said, the Israeli reporter just said that the Syrian soldiers fled. They left everything and they just fled. There is no border right now. So there's nobody that actually protects Syria from outside forces. What's going to happen right now is that they're going to draw new borders, and some of those borders, I think, are going to be inside of Syria, between the Kurds and the rebels. I think that's going to make like a new country right now.
Do you think Israel's going to take some land?
If it is going to take some land, it's going to be for protective measures, not for any reason that, like, to take.
I just think of the Greater Israel. I just think of the Greater Israel map.
Such a bullshit idea.
And the kid can talk about that. He knows, but the Jewish population, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, the kid, but the Jewish population as a whole doesn't care a whit about this whole Greater Israel notion. This is stuff that's peddled online constantly to make them seem more aggressive than they are. Generally, Jewish population wants to party on the beach and kind of live and let live. Granted, there's some rabbis that would want the Greater Israel map, but if we're going to talk about Greater Israel, let's talk about Al-Sham. So Ahmed Al-Shara, who's heading up the HTS, Hayat Tahrir Al-Sham, if you'll notice, it translates to something like the group for the liberation, not of Syria, Al-Sham. So Al-Sham generally in Arabic means the north. Now, sometimes it is used to denote the state of Syria, but that expression is chosen for a reason, because Al-Sham means basically the Levant, the entire Levant. So they don't have in their eyesights only Syria. They have in their eyesights Syria, Lebanon, Israel, everything from the Euphrates to the Mediterranean Sea. So they believe not only in a greater Islamic Caliphate, they believe the Islamic Caliphate should spread all the way from Kazakhstan to the Maghreb. So if we're going to talk Greater Israel, I'm not saying you guys. I'm saying, like, if we're going to have this as a discussion, because I see it online constantly, let's talk about what the Greater Sham is and the Greater Caliphate is, which is much greater than Israel. And there's a lot of people who are religiously and fanatically devoted to it at the cost of killing people.
Yeah, I'll just say that I agree with you. I just say that,
and then I'll come to Peace and Love. Go on.
Yeah, it's just the idea of Greater Israel. I heard it more from Muslims talking about it than I hear it.
They talk about it all the time. They talk about it. Even my relatives, they talk about it all the time. They're obsessed with it. They see
we never talk about it.
Religious. They just talk about it all the time. Everyone. Is there a single Pakistani who hasn't spoken about it? Like, they will just talk about it day and night. They watch videos about it. There's YouTube channels talking about the last days, Armageddon, and they see it as when Greater Israel is going to be made. That's when the Al-Aqsa Mosque is going to be destroyed, and then the Jewish people are going to rebuild the Temple of Solomon there in that location, and then they're going to house the Antichrist. They're going to think it's the last prophet, but they're going to be mistaken. It's going to be the Antichrist. That's preparing for, basically.
Someone from Jordan told me that he really believes that if we will control Jerusalem like more than what we already control, that's weird. But like, if we build the that we will. He said that if we will ruin the Al-Aqsa Mosque, then the Antichrist will come out of there and he will take control of the land. And I'm like, where did you get this? It's like we never heard of this. Like no Jewish person, no Israeli person knows about this kind of stories.
Yeah, I've heard these stories since I've been growing up, since a child, all this kind of stuff, to be honest. So for me, it's just, I've heard it so many times. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? That's the problem. You're making it come true because you're making it come true yourself. Can I just come to Peace and Love? Thanks for waiting patiently, Peace and Love. On the channel Peace and Love, and get your thoughts, and then I'll come to Anand. Hi, how are you doing?
Hi, Lubna. Hi, everybody. I hope you're having a great start of the week. I'm happy to be here. Yeah, there are so many points that I want to touch on because a lot has been happening. But I just want to first off start by congratulating the people of Syria and also the people of Israel, because you guys, like, they are going in and they're eliminating threat, 500 strikes in 48 hours, which is a massive accomplishment. And I think something that will be for the betterment for both the people of Syria and for Israel's security as well. Because the people that are moving in, this Jelani guy had a bounty of $10 million issued by the State Department and the FBI, not like more than like 10 years ago. And now he's the head of the state. One thing you can be sure of is that they cannot be trusted. So they were useful instruments in eliminating the threat from Iran. And then now it's time to swoop in and take control. Not saying that, by taking land or anything, that like Israel is not doing any of that, but they're just, being very strategic about it, which is always what I like about Israel. They're just so strategic about everything. Yeah, and so that's the point that I first want to touch on, is that I'm glad that you guys are having this discussion. But again, I just want to remind you guys, you're first world country people, okay? And the people that you're dealing with, they're a bit dumb in it. Like, these people are, they can be emotionally manipulated. They're rampant corruption. There's like 1,000 divisions among them. So instead of focusing on how strong they are, maybe you can look at what makes them weak. And what makes them weak are like signs that are abundant. If you just, follow the current situation within UK and outside in the world, you will find very common patterns on where these people are vulnerable. In terms of their strength, I would say, if you really break it down, if I just come into decomposing the problem a little bit, you see that they have loud voices. They have like very vocal advocates. They have the media, okay? They have a good media support in terms of social media and their own media channels. And also, I don't know what's going on with BBC, but apparently, some of the UK media as well. And they have the man force behind them. Like, there's like a large number of people who just follow somebody like sheep. They don't think. Somebody's like, directions are given to them, they'll just follow it regardless, right? So these are the strengths that we're basically looking at. But on the other hand, they lack critical thinking. What you guys have is that you have a common purpose behind yourself, where you're putting Britain first. You're worried about your security. So you are actually working out of a very practical threat and a very practical concern. So this is one common purpose that unites everybody in Britain. You have wealth on your side, because the other side, again, they are like, they're not very focused on education. So I don't assume them having good, like, white collar jobs, right? They're mostly, working in blue collars, and that's why they can find so much time to be at all these protests, because they basically don't have a job to go to. They're just working part-time, living on, feeding off of the benefit system or living with their families.
Can I just interrupt there, sorry, because I would say it would be a mistake to think that Islamists and extremists look a certain way or because they are spread across. You'd be surprised that quite educated people who are Islamists and extremists. So I think that don't fall for that trap where it's easy to think they fit a certain criteria. They do generally, but I think it's a bit more, sadly, more broader than that. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think the people that you're referring to, these are the people who are assuming more those leadership positions. Like if you remember the doctor from the NHS, which was apparently openly running like a banned extremist organization, and I don't know how he was able to get away for so long. But these are the people who have wealth and education on their side, but again, they decide to be the leaders and exploit their education, exploit the people following them. Okay, but if I talk about it again, the man force that I'm talking about, this 39,000 1% who are like massive population, I imagine them, and I could be wrong, of course, because I'm not in the UK, but I'm just going by what's here in the US and what's in the subcontinent mostly. Um, uh, they are not that educated. So you have education on your side, you have wealth on your side, because if I compare the two groups, I would say the Patriot group has more wealth, education, organizing power. They have like a established system of history, a good sense of democracy, critical reasoning skills, and they listen to one another. But on
Sorry,
the
can I
other
ask-
side,
Sorry, when you say the Patriot group, I think the problem is this country's divided. So you've got the indigenous population. They're not all they won't all they probably all love the country, so they would all say the Patriots. But what we are saying is the definition of patriots. The other indigenous population on the left is saying are right wing, are far right, basically far right. So because the indigenous population themselves are divided, sadly, other people are taking advantage. And we see that in the pro-Palestine protests. Like I said before, I support everyone's right to protest peacefully, whether that's pro-Palestine, pro-Israel. I think, but when you look at the pro-Palestine protests, then a lot of them are actually, a significant number are non-Muslims in that protest. I think there's more division. Can I
can I just jump in there? Because you just touched on a point that I was thinking about, and people can, talk more about it. The people that you're referring to are what we call as useful idiots. So they don't know what they have. And okay, so first of all, I want to clear this. I think it's beautiful that human beings are standing up for one another, regardless of their race and religion. As human beings, that is a quality that I think we should never lose. So when Mike comes onto this live and he's just, I'm advocating for everybody, I think that's a great thing to do. But what they don't realize is that their goodness is being used because they're being useful idiots. And when the time comes, and I challenge any useful idiot out here, anybody who is championing for that cause, go ahead and just as an experiment, go ahead, go to your nearest, I don't know, mosque or somebody, and just say one thing that is a little bit out of line. Just say that, oh, I think, Bashar, falling off was a really good thing. And these people, to them, they think, oh, Bashar is gone. I mean, al-Assad is gone. That means now it was a Western-backed program. It was a Western-backed operation to weaken Iran and to weaken Hezbollah and Hamas. And they will go off on you, because what you cannot do is that you cannot even disagree with them in the slightest. You have to be 100% toe-to-toe with them. And if you just divest just a little bit, watch them go off and watch them flip and freak out.
But can I just respond to that? Because some people would say that I'm a useful idiot as well, right? Because I'm pandering to the views of the indigenous population, the right wing, who actually don't give a shit about me and they're just using me, which is what Jordan M alluded to, that basically. And I would say this is subjective, right? And only time will really tell who ends up being the useful idiot. Can I just coping? A few of you guys had your hands up, and I appreciate Peace and Love has made some interesting points. Can I and I've lost track now, so I'll come to coping first, and then put your hands up, guys, if you want to come in. Go on, coping.
Thank you. I didn't want to be interrupting too much, but I kind of have to go, so that's why I wanted to do a public service announcement, and possibly two. If Lubna, if you can check the private chat and let me know if the second public service announcement would be okay for you, that would be nice. Meanwhile, let's take the first one. Ladies and gentlemen watching there, what Jake has been, for example, he laid out brilliantly, and I think it's maybe worth cutting out. That is precisely why you love the show, and why some of you, for some weird reason, have not pressed the like button. I would like to know, like, maybe you want to come on here and talk with us, right? Because we're just regular folks, so you should do so too, right? Do like and subscribe with the notification bell on, and if you don't feel like coming on and sharing your thoughts and having a full conversation, you can still be a part of the conversation. via super chat. Yes, Lubna just have to be a little bit better at maybe keeping them super chats floating long enough for us to read it, because before you know it, it might actually be a really good point that you bring on. And you're financially validating the show, validating us, that means as well. So we will feel courteously obliged to be responding if you have a valid point in criticism to be bringing on and contributing. And this pertains, to this thing we've been talking about. We do need these iterations of freedom of speech and discourse, open discourse, for these are how are you ever going to get how are you going to prevent the authoritarians that I mentioned earlier from getting control? Why did, like Jake mentioned, why would they hide the information that would be discriminatory if that actually helps you do the troubleshooting more efficiently? Well, if things get out of hand, as we've seen, then the authorities can start clamping down and solve the problem they are partially responsible for. So yes, do please like and subscribe. Do come on, share your thoughts. We are all part of this, and I'm very grateful to see you, Peace and Love, come back with such cogent thoughts. And it's especially now since I'm going off, I know that the stream is replacing me with a very competent guest and speaker. I also very much appreciate all the rest of my guests here, and also those of you in the audience, even those of you who did not push back at me yesterday. I still love you.
You set up a trap basically yesterday, and you're trying to test us. Was it a trap, or is it that you said something and now you reflected and now you're feeling bad about it?
It's a little bit of both. Like, I did actually say it because, like I stated in the beginning of my disclaimer, that I did want a response to it, but I should maybe have worded it as pushback. And then I thought, like, because I did not get any pushback while on the stream, that is, and so I felt bad about it, just leaving it out there. And the memo might have been missed with that when all of that is just viewed with praise, right? No pushback is bad in this particular case when using such violent rhetorics that I used. So that's I thought it was important of me to address that. Speaking of which, before I go, the second PSA. Are you okay with it?
I wasn't sure what you meant, so I'm happy for you to explain it.
Okay. So, on my channel, the one that I use, it's not a really user channel. So please, people, do not take this as like I'm trying to get people to come to my channel. It's an entirely different purpose altogether. But what I do is I take clips from open live forums like the ones here. Mostly, that's what I do. And then I try to make more digestible pieces, because these discussions with a whole bunch of nobodies like you and me and everyone else, it's an acquired taste. And when you see a stream that goes 2 hours, or if you go on the Wyatt's DPA Open Mic, then you have 6 to 7 hours, in one go. So that's really hard to be sharing. So I want to try to make some more digestible pieces, which can make it more easy for people to get interested. So far it's just easier for me to take clips of what I have said and then try to put that into a context. So, because it's just easier. All right. But I would like some of you in the audience to help me provide good feedback. First of all, the reason I'm mentioning this is because I have to mention to Lubna out of respect, because I don't want to be leeching off her show or anything like that. And also out of respect for my guests, because my fellow guests here, because you should know that, if you come on, that there's a good chance that a person like me would find something you said very interesting and want to put it on. And that's where it comes here to you in the audience. If there's parts here, for example, of this stream and forum that you think is worthy to be clipped out, and then we may provide it, for example, to Lubna later, just discuss it, right? And you can comment. And also, if I do some shenanigans, something that is a little bit off, right? Something that could be improved. Like, for example, I'm going to see if I can get time to upload my spiel from yesterday. And then I'm going to have see if there's any pushback on that. Of course, I don't know, it's going to be a little bit lost because I only have like 10 subscribers or something. But the point still stands. Like, I'm asking you, just like I did earlier, I'm asking you to actually participate, because, we're all different, right? And being different is good. Like, you bring something unique to the table. Even when you're wrong, you provide a reference point for how we can get things right. So, yeah, those of you who think there are some good pieces here from some of the other of my guests, make it a little bit easier for me. Maybe timestamp also, right? Consider Lubna. She sometimes have to kind of wade through all this. She can't do that. She doesn't have the time for it.
Yeah, and I'm not joking. It's difficult. Look, ideally, so of course, you know, the more the merrier. If someone could even edit bits out and send me the video and I can repost it instead of me doing all the work. Of course, if you guys want to help out, you know, there's different ways people can help out. Some people become members, some people give super chats. Even if you're watching the video, that helps. Even if you're not watching the video and you have it on, even that helps the algorithms. Even if, you know, some people comment for the algorithms, or hitting the like button, sharing, all of that kind of stuff helps. If you create snippets and edit videos and send it to me to post, obviously I'll check if it's suitable. Then I could post it on my channel. That would help as well. All those kind of things. Happy for that. Thank you, Coping. I think Anand, sorry, you were waiting for. Thanks so much, Coping. Anand, you had your hand up, and we've got a few people back.